I stopped waiting after she left with the baby, then I heard a laugh outside. A year of silence taught me to keep my fire for myself, not for someone who walked out without looking back. I sleep, I read, I say no, until that small, bright laugh slipped under the door and the life I rebuilt met the past I refused to invite in. Before we continue, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. This will greatly help me with promotion. Thank you. Hi, I'm David, 36, and 4 years ago my wife told me she was going on a girls' trip, then vanished. No note, no fight, no warning, just boarded a plane and never came back. For years I searched, grieved, blamed myself. Therapy saved me. And just when I rebuilt everything, she knocked on my door, with a baby in her arms. The morning she left was unremarkable. I drove her to the airport, she kissed my cheek, thanked me for being so understanding, and disappeared into the crowd. I remember thinking her tone was strange, too final, but I ignored it. That was my mistake. We were struggling. Trying for kids, failing, and the doctor had confirmed the problem was me. Low count. Low chance. I took it hard. She was gentle at first, but her smile cooled. She stopped mentioning baby names. She started critiquing my body, my energy, my usefulness. Little comments, sharp as glass. Why don't you start running again? You never finish anything. I chalked it up to stress. The day she left, I thought it was a normal vacation. She'd done girls' trips before. I stayed up late to check her flight landed. It did. I called. No answer. Hours passed. Nothing. I assumed her phone died. By sunrise, the knot in my chest tightened. I called her sister. Then her friends. Finally, one of them picked up and, confused, said, "What trip?" They were at brunch, in the same city as me. She had lied. Not just a little fib. A coordinated exit. Bags packed. Phone off. Marriage vanished like vapor. I didn't sleep for days. Her mother hadn't heard from her either. I clung to hope. Maybe she got hurt. Maybe she lost her phone. But even hope has a shelf life. After the second week, I stopped calling. After the second month, I knew she was gone. On purpose. I died that winter. Not literally. But something in me caved in. I moved through the days like a man underwater. My therapist told me. She didn't just leave. She evacuated. That word stuck with me. Like I was a natural disaster. Then came the papers. I filed for divorce after a year. Abandonment. No contest. She never even replied. I signed them on a rainy Tuesday and walked out of the courthouse alone. That was the day I truly started over. I got promoted. I traveled. I even picked up photography again. Life didn't feel amazing, but it felt mine. Until she came back. 4 years later. Holding a baby. I didn't recognize her at first. That sounds impossible, I know. But she looked different, drawn, thinner, like someone who'd been living out of a suitcase for too long. Her hair was shorter, darker, her eyes shadowed by whatever life she'd been living. But that smile? That half-hopeful, half-presumptuous smile she wore as she stood on my porch holding a baby like it was a peace offering, that's what snapped me out of my trance. "Hi, David," she said, like we were picking up after a weekend apart. I didn't move. Didn't speak. My brain was lagging behind my body, trying to reconcile the years of silence with the woman now asking to step inside my house like she still had a key. Then came the line. "Can I come in?" I shook my head. "No. You can explain from out here." She blinked, as if I'd slapped her. I guess in her head, I'd always be the doormat. The man she walked away from without consequence. The one who would never stop waiting. She glanced at the baby, maybe 6 months old, dark curls, wide eyes, then looked back at me. "I know this is a shock," she began, shifting her weight. "But I came back to talk. To fix things." I almost laughed. Fix things? You can fix a leaky faucet. Not a 4-year abandonment. I made mistakes, she continued. I know that. But I never stopped thinking about you. That line hit weird. Because if she had been thinking about me, she wouldn't have vanished. She wouldn't have let me rot in limbo while she built a new life. She wouldn't have ignored court summons. But I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear what story she'd come up with. She launched into a speech, carefully rehearsed, with just enough cracks in her voice to seem sincere. She told me she'd left because she needed space after the infertility diagnosis. That she panicked. That she didn't know how to grieve the life we'd imagined. But then her tone shifted. I still wanted a child, she said, gently bouncing the baby. And I found someone who could give me that. I stared at her, trying to understand how someone could say something so cruel, so casually. She told me the father was out of the picture. No details, just vague language about things not working out. She said she realized too late that the life she wanted, the stable one, was the one she'd already had, with me. And now that I have him, she looked down at the baby, then back at me. We can be a family. I didn't scream. Didn't slam the door. But inside? I was shaking. Because for years I'd convinced myself maybe I was the problem. That she left because of something I lacked. But no. She left because I wasn't useful anymore. And now, here she was, expecting me to become useful again. I said nothing for a while. Just stood there with my arms crossed, letting the silence stretch long enough to make her squirm. Then I finally said, You disappeared. You lied. You had a child with someone else. And you think I'm the consolation prize? Her eyes welled up. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. She started crying harder, saying she was sorry, that she wanted a second chance. And all I could think was, who is this woman? Because whoever she used to be, she wasn't anymore. But I wasn't either. And I wasn't going to let her rewrite our story just because hers had turned into a mess. She tried to shift the blame before I could say another word. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she said, voice cracking just enough to sound tragic. You have to understand, I felt trapped. Like life was closing in on me. Everywhere I looked, it was disappointment. The infertility. The pressure. Watching you sink into that depression. I needed out. I needed something different. I stared at her. The baby was starting to fuss, and she gently rocked him while still trying to make me see her as some kind of victim in this whole thing. A woman pushed too far. A woman who made an impulsive choice and now just needed a little compassion. But she hadn't made an impulsive choice. She had lied to my face, left the country, ignored everyone who loved her, ghosted her own mother, vanished for 4 years, and reappeared like it was a long weekend. You didn't just need space, I said. You disappeared. You lied to everyone. You used your friends as an alibi. You made people think you were dead. She flinched. I know. I know I went too far. But I thought I could come back when I was ready. I thought maybe you'd still be waiting. That's when the anger really kicked in, not rage, not yelling, but this cold, low-burning fury that started deep in my chest and climbed its way to my mouth. Waiting? I repeated. She nodded, ashamed but still hopeful. You always loved me more than anyone ever has. And I thought maybe when you saw us, she motioned to the baby, you'd understand. That this is what I needed to become who I'm meant to be. I couldn't hold back anymore. I started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd that my body didn't know what else to do. This, I gestured between us, isn't a romantic tragedy. It's not some Nicholas Sparks plotline. You didn't go find yourself on a beach and realize I was the one. You ran away. You chose someone else. You had a baby. And now that your fantasy fell apart, you want to crawl back into the life you burned down like it's a backup plan. Her face hardened. I could see it, the switch flicking. She realized the narrative wasn't working. The regret wasn't enough. So she pivoted again. Faster than I expected. You think you're so perfect? She snapped. You think I wanted to leave everything behind? You think it was easy being with someone who couldn't give me the one thing I wanted most in the world? That hit like a gut punch. Even after everything, it still hurt. Like an old wound ripped open all over again. But I didn't flinch. Then you should have told me that. You should have had the guts to look me in the eye and say it instead of sneaking out like a coward. The baby started to cry, loud now, overwhelmed by the tension. She tried to calm him, bouncing and shushing, but her face was flushed with frustration. Maybe she thought the baby would be her trump card. The thing that made me forgive her. The reason I'd finally cave. She whispered over the baby's head. You don't know what it's like. Being alone. Raising a child by yourself. I didn't expect his father to leave. I thought. Her voice cracked again. I thought he'd stay. But he didn't. He said it was my problem. There it was. The real story, sliding out from between the cracks of her performance. He'd left her. And only then did she remember the man she'd abandoned. And now she was here with a baby in her arms and the nerve to say, we can still be a family. I didn't speak. I let the silence hang. It stretched until she looked up and asked, almost timidly, don't you want a family, David? Don't you want to be a father? I nodded slowly. Yes. I do. But not like this. Not with you. And not with a child that isn't mine. She froze. Because I'd said it out loud. What she'd been hoping I'd dance around. That I'd quietly adopt this baby emotionally, maybe legally. That I'd accept her mess as my future. She tried one more thing. I can forgive you, you know, she said. For shutting me out. For the divorce. We can move past it. The three of us, together. Like it was supposed to be. And that's when I lost whatever pity I had left. You don't forgive someone for surviving the damage you caused. You're not the victim here. You made every decision that brought you to this porch. And I'm not your redemption arc. She looked like she might say something else. But I was done. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam the door. I just said, go. And this time, she actually listened. She didn't say goodbye. She just stood there for a few seconds, lips parted like she still had a speech to deliver, but the words wouldn't come. Maybe for the first time in years, she realized she couldn't charm or manipulate her way out of this one. She tightened her grip on the baby carrier, turned, and walked down the steps. I watched from the doorway as she crossed the street and disappeared around the corner. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken either. What I felt was clean. Like something had finally been scraped out of my chest that had been rotting there for years. I didn't know if it was closure or exhaustion, but whatever it was quiet. And that was enough. Inside, the house felt suddenly bigger. I sat on the couch, still staring at the door like I expected it to creak open again. But it didn't. The silence stayed. I let myself sit in it, let it stretch over the next hour while I made coffee I didn't drink, paced from room to room, and tried to convince myself it was really over. Later that day, I got a text. It was from her mother. I'm sorry for everything. She told us what happened. I don't agree with how she's handled anything. Please know that. I stared at the message for a long time. Her mother had always been kind to me. During the months after the disappearance, she was the only one who tried to keep me grounded. I almost replied with a long paragraph, but instead I just typed, "Thank you. I appreciate it." And that was it. In the days that followed, the ripple effects started. A couple of her old friends reached out, people who'd vanished when she did, people I assumed were co-conspirators. But no. They were just bystanders. Confused, embarrassed by association, and now wanting to check in. Some hinted around for information. One actually asked me, "Are you going to be involved in the kid's life?" I blocked that number. I don't owe anyone anything. Not explanations, not guilt, not a second chapter in a story I never asked to be part of. I spent a long time carrying the weight of her choices. Letting her absence define me. Letting her silence tell me who I was. But not anymore. That baby, he's not mine. That woman, she's not my wife. Not legally, not emotionally, not in any universe I want to be part of. She left. And I stayed. I rebuilt. And now, the door stays closed. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? She showed up, I said no, the curtain drops, we all move on. But life doesn't respect clean endings. A week after she left my doorstep, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. Then a third. On the fourth, I picked up, annoyed, expecting maybe a telemarketer. It was her father. We hadn't spoken in years, not since that last Christmas dinner where she was already emotionally gone, but still pretending. He was always stiff, polite, one of those men who spoke in short sentences and long sighs. But this time, he didn't waste any breath. "David," he said, "I'm sorry to bother you. But we need to talk." I almost hung up right there. "We?" I asked. "My daughter's not well," he said. She's struggling more than she'll admit." I didn't say anything. He went on. "She told us everything. About the baby. About you. I can't defend what she did. But she's still my daughter." He paused. I could hear the weight behind his silence. "I'm not asking you to take her back," he said. "But the baby. He didn't ask for any of this." I closed my eyes. There it was. They wanted me to help raise the child she had with another man. As if I was the insurance policy they were cashing in after their daughter wrecked every bridge she had. "She has no job, David," he continued. "No partner. No plan. And we're not in the best health. I'm not saying you owe her anything, but I thought you'd want to know." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. What I wanted was peace. What I wanted was never to hear the name again. But here he was, a man I once called family, laying guilt like bricks at my feet. "I'm sorry," I said, calm but final. "But I'm not the solution. I didn't create this situation. And I'm not responsible for fixing it." He sighed. "I thought you might say that. I'm sorry for your grandson," I added. "Truly. But I'm not his father." And I hung up. I sat there for a while after, phone in my hand, wondering if maybe I was being heartless. If maybe the decent thing to do was to step in. To play the savior. But that's the thing, right? I spent years being the decent one. The stable one. The patient husband. The understanding man. And where did that get me? Alone. Abandoned. Got punched without warning. So no. I wasn't going to sacrifice myself again for someone else's crisis. Especially not for someone who made her choice and doubled down on it until it exploded in her face. But of course, it didn't stop there. 2 days later, I got another message. This time from a mutual friend, well, her friend really. One of those people who vanished when she did. She sent me this long guilt-ridden essay disguised as a text message, saying things like, "She's changed. Motherhood has humbled her. Everyone deserves forgiveness." I didn't reply. I just deleted it. And then came the kicker. One night, I found a handwritten note slid under my door. The handwriting was familiar. Slanted, rushed, like it had been written in the passenger seat of a moving car. I didn't know how to say it before. But I was scared. I thought I'd never be happy without a child. And when I had him, I thought everything would make sense. But it didn't. It just made me realize how much I lost. How much I gave up. "I'm not asking you to raise him. I'm asking you to see him. Once. Just once." It ended with, "If you don't want to, I understand. But I'll always wonder if we could have been something again." I folded the letter neatly and dropped it in the trash. Not out of cruelty. But because I meant what I said, I'm not her savior. And I'm not his father. After that letter, the silence returned. Not just outside, but inside me too. No more calls. No more texts. No more surprise visits or doorstep dramatics. She was gone again, but this time it felt final. And you'd think, after everything, I'd be relieved. But I wasn't. Not at first. I kept waiting for the next twist. The next manipulation. A lawyer's letter, a social media post, some stunt meant to drag me back into her orbit. But it never came. Instead, something unexpected happened. I started breathing easier. Deeper. I'd catch myself smiling on my way to work, not because anything extraordinary had happened, but because nothing had. No weight in my chest. No ghost hovering behind me, waiting to knock again. And for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving her. I was living without her. I joined a photography group. Took a solo trip to Portugal. Started waking up earlier and going for runs, not because I was trying to prove anything, but because I wanted to. My life wasn't flashy or perfect, but it was mine again. It didn't orbit around someone else's emotions. It didn't shrink to make room for someone else's chaos. Then, one night, while going through old storage bins, I found a shoebox tucked in the back of my closet. Inside were photos of us. Wedding pictures. A crumpled note she once left me on my lunch. A sonogram image we never used, printed by the fertility clinic as some kind of hopeful gesture. I sat there staring at it all. It should have hurt. Maybe even wrecked me. But it didn't. It felt like archaeology, digging up a past that belonged to someone else. A version of me I didn't recognize anymore. A man who thought love meant sacrifice. Who thought marriage meant martyrdom. Who believed that loving someone hard enough could keep them from leaving. I was never going back to being him. He died the day she walked away. And the man who stood up from that closet floor? He had no space left for people who only showed up when their world fell apart. It's been a year since she showed up with that baby. 12 full months of silence. No calls. No letters. No surprise appearances. Even the guilt-laced messengers eventually faded out. She disappeared again, but this time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt untouched. I heard from a mutual friend, not long ago, that she moved 2 cities over. Got a part-time job at a daycare. Still bouncing between apartments, relying on her parents more than she'd like. The baby, he's growing. Healthy, sweet, from what little I was told. And that's good. I hope she finds stability. I hope she becomes a better person. Not for me. For him. Because while I won't play a role in that story, I won't root for her downfall either. I'm just done. That part of my life is sealed shut like a room in a house I don't walk through anymore. And here's the strange thing. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm not even sad. I'm grateful. She forced me to rebuild. And in doing that, I found pieces of myself I didn't even know were missing. I no longer define myself by what I lost. I define myself by what I chose to stay. To grow. To stand at the edge of heartbreak and not let it swallow me whole. Now, I sleep better. I laugh more. I read entire books without drifting into old memories. I say no without guilt. I love slowly, carefully, with both eyes open. And most importantly, I don't wait by the door anymore. Not for her. Not for anyone who left without looking back. Because when someone walks out on you like that, don't ever let them walk back in just because they're cold, and you've got a fire going. My fire now? It's for me. And it's burning just fine.